member points.
Mr. Chairman, I may have questions in a moment, but if it's all right, I yield to my colleague Steve King here first.
Thank you, Mr. Franks, our ranking member, and Mr. Kennedy, for your testimony. I regret that I have not read deeply through a lot of the material that you put out, but it's clear to me that you put a lot of material out. It is also clear to me that you have made a visit or two to Iowa. I just reflect back upon a meeting in Clear Lake a few years ago, and a quote that I recall would be, I believe actually this would be exact, large-scale oil producers were a greater threat to the United States and democracy than bin Laden's terrorist network. Is that an accurate quote?
I don't know if that's accurate, but I believe it and I support it. And the reason for this is the same reason Teddy Roosevelt said it. Teddy Roosevelt said this nation would never be destroyed by a foreign enemy. But he said that malefactors of great wealth, working from within, would erode and subvert American democracy. And if you look, again, not from me, but from the Raleigh News and Observer, a 5-part series on Boss Hogg, it shows how this industry meticulously subverted and corrupted virtually every relevant public official in the state.
Mr. Kennedy, I've got a lot of questions. I just want you out.
No, because this is a very inflammatory question.
Let the witness answer the question, Mr. King, please.
I'm answering your question, sir, and you asked me an inflammatory question, and I'm giving you an answer for it. There are laws now.
Your statement, Mr. Kennedy, you're telling me your statement is an inflammatory question when I ask if you can confirm it.
I'm telling you that I can confirm it, and I'm explaining it to you so that you understand what I'm talking about.
I'll be happy to introduce your op-ed into the record if you could just suspend for a
If we
moment.
cannot have a colloquy here, Mr. Kennedy, will you go ahead and respond? And if we need extra time for Mr. King to ask questions, we will provide it to Mr. King to be fair to him. But I think it's fair that when the witness has asked a question, he be allowed to respond. Mr. Kennedy, proceed.
Today, in 14 states, there are laws that make it illegal to criticize food from factory farms. Now, you may say, this is anti-American. I think it is. I think it violates our First Amendment rights. You may say this couldn't be true, but ask Oprah Winfrey, who went for a 6.5-week jury trial in Texas because she criticized on her show factory farm food. Do you think that's American? Do you think that that's democratic? And 3 state legislatures have now passed laws that make it illegal to photograph a factory farm or a factory farm animal from a public road. In Maryland, in North Carolina, and many other states have laws that make it illegal for the public to learn where factory farms are located, even though the government has this information. This is an assault on our democracy. Wherever you see environmental injury, you will also see the subversion of democracy. And that's what I talked about when I made that statement. Osama bin Laden has no power over this country to make us change our laws. We do. And the biggest threat to our country is if legislatures, and particularly those in the possession of large businesses, begin restricting our rights at home to do what the Constitution says that we can do. Osama bin Laden can't make us alter our own Constitution, but that is happening in this country every day because of the power of this industry.
Thank you, sir. Mr. King, you're recognized, and we'll give you the time if you need for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And consistent with Mr. Kennedy's response, I have in my hand an op-ed dated Tuesday, May 14, 2002, in the Des Moines Register titled, "I'm Serious Hog Lots Threaten Democracy" by bear witness Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And it's part of a public document, but I would ask unanimous consent to enter that into the record. And I think that does flesh out the statement that he's made. And I'd also ask...
Without objection.
Thank you. And I'd also ask the Des Moines Register article dated April 10th, 2002, that is a news article that stipulates some of the same dialogue that took place in Iowa back then. Unanimous consent to enter it into the record as well.
I'm happy to have that entered in the record with the proviso that the information in that article, this latter article, is not necessarily true.
None of the articles speak.
It was taken from representatives of the Pork Producers Council and the American Farm.
Thank you, sir. Without objection, the statement will be allowed in, and the statement only speaks to what it does.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Is the witness allowed to object to the unanimous consent request?
Well, no, he can't, and he didn't, and we did, but it wasn't permitted, and he's out of order, but we understand that, and he didn't understand the essence of the rules on admitting something into the record, because it doesn't stand for the veracity of what's contained therein. Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And I'd be very happy to go deeply into this hog issue. I will just make this statement into the record, and that is that on a per head basis, today's hog production in Iowa and around the country is far, far more favorable to the environment than anything we've ever had before. And it gets better every single day. Our water's cleaner, our soil is cleaner. We're doing a far better job of taking care of that livestock. And we had more hogs in Iowa in 1952 than we have today. And they're far safer today than they were in 1952. But I think the point
A lot more family farmers.
I will get to you with a question. You'll have an opportunity to answer, Mr. Kennedy. I think the point that the panel is going to be interested in is not so much debating the hog industry in Iowa.
Mr. King, for the record, without objection, you have an additional 3 minutes if you say that. Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I think the point that this panel is going to be interested in is the statement that the hog industry has corrupted public officials. I think at one point you said every public official in the state apparently had effect on this.
Of North Carolina.
I think it impugns all elected public officials, and I think that's a very broad statement. And I think your record of making very broad statements, I think, causes us to take a look at the rest of your testimony here today with a bit of a jaundiced eye. I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that.
What I said was that the Raleigh News and Observer concluded that, and with strong documentation, a 5-part series that won the Pulitzer Prize, that every relevant public official in the state of North Carolina had been corrupted by that industry. And I urge you to go read that article. Now, what happened once they did it in North Carolina, they dropped the price of hogs to 8 cents a pound at kill weight. At that point, states like Iowa, like your state, where the public officials could not be that easily corrupted, had to adopt the same system, or they would have been out of business. Like it's put out, as you probably know, almost 100,000 independent hog farmers in Iowa. They put out 28,700 independent hog farmers in North Carolina.
And I take it from that response that you do agree with the statement that every public official in the state had been corrupted by this process.
I said that is what the Raleigh News and Observer concluded.
Since you've introduced that into the record, I'm going to take it that you're endorsing that statement and you believe it.
I'm saying that I didn't investigate every public official in the state. I'm saying that's what the Raleigh News and Observer concluded. And
I'll just allow the
the Pulitzer Prize for it, and maybe not every single one was corrupted. I can't tell you.
Maybe some exceptions. Thank you. And is it also your belief that manure is a hazardous or toxic waste?
Manure, when it's applied at agronomic rates, is a fertilizer and it has a beneficial use to the land. But when it's applied beyond agronomic rates, then it becomes a poison to the land.
And you understand, Mr. Kennedy, that we do have regulations that limit the rate of application so that it is not a pollutant.
If you think those regulations are enforced, if you think those regulations are effective, I beg you to come to North Carolina with me and look around. Come even to Iowa and look around. That's what the captive agencies are saying, and it is complete baloney. They do not protect
Mr. Kennedy, I'd remind you that I live in the middle of this, and the wind blows in 4 directions and the water runs downhill.
I would ask you how much.
And I do not see the description
I would ask you how much.
I've got to take exception to it.
I would ask you how much contributions you received from the Farm Bureau and from the Pork Producers Council.
I'd have to look. I'd ask you how you got interested into this industry in the first place.
How did I get into it?
Yes.
Because they're the worst polluter in America.
Weren't you assigned to do some public service that got you started in this, Mr. Kennedy?
You mean in protecting the environment?
No. I mean assigned to 800 hours of public service that was your gateway into this Hudson River issue.
Time's expired, Mr. King.
You and my character with your question, Mr. Kennedy.
Oh,
Question yours.
if you're asking me how I got into...
Time's expired.